Hello everybody, my name is Paul Swinney and I'm Director of Policy Research at the think tank Centre for Cities that looks at the 63 largest urban areas across the UK and what role they make in terms of the contribution to the national economy. What I want to run you through now in my presentation is how productivity differs across the country. Productivity is the thing that Levelling Up should be trying to address above everything else, but why we shouldn't expect to see, even in the most perfect world, productivity to be flat across the country. So the title of the talk is Why Levelling Up the Economy Can't Be About Making Every Place the Same. So let me explain why that's the case. First off, let's look at these three maps. So if you were to pick out, because of the divides that we see across a whole range of indicators, you can pick any indicator out that you want pretty much and put it on a map and you'll see that there's variation across the country. So I've picked out three here. We've got skills, we've got life expectancy, so health, and then we've got productivity. And as you can see, lots of different shades of green on that map. Now, any human being would see those maps and think, oh my God, look at that variation. What we need to do is to try and flatten that variation out. And so we have one colour of green across the whole of the UK rather than having this variation. Now, in terms of skills and health, there are very good reasons why we want to do that. But also the policy has direct levers it can pull to try and address these things. So there's no reason in particular why life expectancy should be so much lower or skills outcomes should be so much worse in a place like Barrow, for example, rather than a place like St Albans. In principle, policy can go about doing something about that. And so Levelling Up should be about trying to make those first two maps clear, or one colour. But in terms of the third map, productivity, while our gut reaction might be that we want to flatten that out, actually, the reality is that we shouldn't expect to see that all one colour across the country. And that's because different places play different roles in the national economy, or as I want to talk about now, should be playing different roles in the national economy. And so even in the utopia of the perfect world, we should expect to still see variation across the country. So we're not satisfied with the current level of variation and we want to change it. But even, if policy was to work and we were to level up the economy, whatever that actually means, we should still expect to see a type of variation across the country. So let me show you why. In principle, cities are more productive than non-urban areas because they're clustering lots of activity, lots of things in one place, and if businesses locate there, they're more productive as a result of that. So they've got access to a larger pool of workers, hopefully skilled workers. They've got access to shared inputs like street lights, roads, infrastructure, broadband infrastructure, etc., etc. And they've got access to other companies as well, which they can share ideas and information with. Now, this is in the theory is known as agglomeration, which is a horrible word to say, but it's the word that has been assigned to it. And if you look in the greater southeast of England, that plays out. So the three bars on the left-hand side show you productivity of cities themselves, of then local authorities that surround cities, and then local authorities that don't border a city that are further away. And what you can see is that the cities are more productive than both their hinterlands, but also those deeper lying rural areas too. And that very much fits the pattern of what we'd expect from the theory perspective. But if you look at the bars on the right-hand side, you see that that's not the case. So you do see that those deep lying rural areas are least productive. Then we move on to the areas bordering cities, and you see they become a little bit more productive. Then move to the cities themselves outside the greater southeast. You can see that then that bar goes down again. That pattern on the right should be reflective of the pattern on the left, and it isn't. And what's interesting is the darkest green bars for rural areas are, yes, there's a difference, but it's not massive. The lighter green bars in the middle, the bordering cities, there's a difference there, but the difference is not very great. Then the light green bars for the cities themselves, you can see that difference actually is quite considerable, and that's where the challenge is. We then take this further and say, well, let's look at individual cities to understand what's going on and where the problem is. This chart shows a bit of a head scratcher for urban economists. So what it does is it looks at city size and productivity. And extending the argument from the last slide, and what it says is that what the theory says is that as cities get larger, they should become more productive for all the reasons that agglomeration theory gives us. In the UK, and I've adjusted the slide slightly, the measurements to sort of show that there is some degree of a relationship. But in the UK, this relationship holds much less than what we see in Western European countries or the United States. And there are two things that are going on here. One is that you can see there are a number of smaller cities that tend to perform probably better than what we'd expect, a number of them sort of within the orbit of London. But more importantly, the second reason is that a number of our big cities, you can see down towards the bottom of the chart, are very much underperforming. They are well below that line. Now, the big issue here is that not only have we got underperformance of our big cities, the very fact that you're multiplying that underperformance by the fact that they are big places means that the impact on the national economy is very, very large. And what we estimate, very conservative, simple but conservative estimates, is the underperformance of the 8 largest cities outside of London. So Bristol performs okay, but the other 8 largest cities like Manchester, Birmingham, Glasgow, for example, they cost the economy just shy of £50 billion a year. And that's around about 2.4% of output each year that is being lost because of the underperformance of these big places. Now, that's bad for the cities themselves, it's bad for their wider regional economies, but also, as that 50 billion figure shows us, it's bad for the national economy too. And that's why we need, from an economy perspective, levelling up should be focusing on the underperformance of these big places. Now, of course, you could say to me, well, you're just using UK evidence, and maybe that's just the way things are in the UK. But actually, if we then compare instead not just UK evidence, but look at UK cities in the context of Western Europe and compare like for like, so big UK cities to big Western European cities, what you can see here is that big or large UK cities are well behind their comparator cities on the continent in terms of productivity. So places like Dublin, Amsterdam, Munich, Stuttgart, very much more productive than places like Nottingham, Manchester, Glasgow, Birmingham. And this is really showing where the problem is. The issue that we've got is our biggest cities, despite the political rhetoric that we get, our biggest cities are not playing the role in the national economy that other big cities elsewhere in the world, in the developed world, are playing. And that is a big problem, not only for regional divides, but also in terms of national economic performance. But crucially, as I said, if we were then to say we've measured sort of the gap off the line, we know what the output gap is, what's costing us £50 billion a year just in terms of the performance of those big places. If we were then to say, right, well, let's sort of reach this utopia state, let's get every place to its productivity potential, because that's what policy should be trying to do. It should be trying to get rural areas to reaching their potential. It should be trying to get big cities to reach their potential. But the big difference is that the potential of rural areas is not the same as the potential of big cities. So the issue we've got in the UK at the moment is that Manchester should be as productive as Bristol, or even more productive than Bristol. It should be as productive as, say, Munich or Marseille. The problem is actually Manchester is more akin to Cumbria in terms of its productivity, a rural area, as opposed to Bristol, and therefore then trails even further behind some of those Western European comparators. But what this map then shows on the left-hand side is the current variation again, as I showed you in the first slide, and on the right-hand side it shows you what the variation would look like if we were to reach the potential of every individual place. And what you can see there is that there's less purple on there, there's a bit more green, but crucially there's still variation across there because different parts of the economy play very different roles because of the inherent benefits that they offer. And so we still would see that variation even if we were able to level up the economy. So conclusions. Leveling up the economy can't mean making everywhere the same. Different places have different roles in the economy, and we should be helping places, or policy should be helping places to reach their productivity potential rather than trying to flatten the map out in terms of colour. Large cities are punching well below their weight, driving national and international divides. It's costing just shy of £50 billion a year. And crucially, we won't level up unless we address the particular issues faced by Birmingham, Glasgow and Manchester, especially our 3 largest cities that are punching well below their weight and have that drag on regional and national economy. Thank you.